Epictetus once said that, "Of one thing beware, O man. See what is the price at which you sell your will. If you do nothing else, do not sell your will cheap." In the modern world, Stoicism is defined as the endurance of pain or hardship without the display of feelings and without complaint, but the original philosophy was more than just an attitude. According to the Stoics, everything around us operates through a web of cause and effect, resulting in the rational structure of the universe, which they call logos. And while we may not have control over the events that affect us, we do have control over how we approach things. Rather than imagining an ideal society, the Stoics see the world as it is while pursuing self-improvement through 4 cardinal virtues. Practical wisdom, which is navigating complex situations with logic, information, and calmness. Courage, which is to do the right thing and facing daily challenges with clarity and integrity. Justice, in treating every human being, regardless of his or her stature in life, with fairness and kindness. Temperance, or exercising moderation and self-control in all aspects of life. Stoicism was an active school of philosophy for several centuries in Greece and Rome, but as a formal institution it faded away. That said, its influence has continued to inspire several business leaders, politicians, and athletes to this day, which is why in this video we'll be discussing 12 practical exercises according to the book How to Be a Stoic by Massimo Pigliucci that uses Epictetus's Enchiridion, which we can use in the modern world while mastering the 4 Stoic virtues. Number 1. Examine your impressions. Epictetus says, "So make a practice at once of saying to every strong impression, 'An impression is all you are, not the source of the impression.' Then test and assess it with your criteria, but one primarily. Ask, 'Is this something that is or is not in my control?'" By this exercise, Epictetus tells us to constantly examine our impressions, that is, our initial reactions to events, people, and what we're being told, by stepping back to make room for rational deliberation, avoiding rash emotional reactions, and asking whether whatever is being thrown at us is under our control or not. If it is under your control, act on it. If it isn't, then just ignore it. For example, you get stuck in bad traffic and you're getting late for work. Of course, you could have done things which were under your control, like preempting the traffic and leaving early. But now, since you are stuck in that traffic which is not under your control, you could, instead of being irritated or getting angry, just listen to music, keep calm, and carry on. Number 2. Remind yourself of the impermanence of things. In the words of Epictetus, when giving your child or wife a kiss, repeat to yourself, "I am kissing a mortal." The truth is, change is a universal law of nature. Things are changing constantly. Life is ephemeral. The people we care about may be snatched from us in a snap without warning. Therefore, this exercise is about reminding ourselves how precious our loved ones are and that they may soon flow past. Let's appreciate what we have now because it might be gone tomorrow. Life is impermanent. Keep in mind that you're lucky to be able to enjoy the things you have and that your enjoyment might end abruptly and that you might never be able to enjoy those things ever again. Learn to enjoy stuff and people without feeling entitled to them, without clinging. Number 3. The reverse clause. According to Epictetus, whenever planning an action, mentally rehearse what the plan entails. It just isn't true that bad things only happen to bad people. Good or bad, each of us is going to face certain situations. This exercise is all about facing these situations with the best of your abilities while leaving the outcome to fate. Let's suppose that you're considered for a promotion at your job. While we naturally think that our goal is to get the promotion, the outcome, of course, is not in our control. It can only be influenced by us. So you need to make your goal something that actually is in your power and not something that fate can rob you of, which in this case would be to put together the best promotion file you can before the decision is made. Now, you may get the promotion, but there are chances that you won't. The idea is not to absorb the injustice of not getting a promotion that was richly deserved, rather it's to employ the wisdom that sometimes things won't go your way even if you do your best, and regardless of whether you deserved to get the promotion or not. Number 4. How can I use virtue here and now? Epictetus informs us, for every challenge, remember the resources you have within you to cope with it. According to Stoics, we should use every occasion, every challenge as a way to exercise our virtue, to become a better human being by constant application. Going by the previous example, it's very natural for you to feel upset for not getting a promotion that you thought you deserved, or being envious of your colleague who got that promotion instead of you. You might even be angry at your boss for overlooking you. Instead, by remembering your overarching goal, which is just to be a decent person who doesn't do anything that's unvirtuous or that may compromise your identity or integrity, you can let go of the negative feelings and take this situation as a learning curve and look for the ways you could improve your work performance. The truth is, all of us have a lot more self-control, endurance, and patience than we think we do. Number 5. Pause and take a deep breath. As we learn from the words of Epictetus, remember it's not enough to be hit or insulted to be harmed. You must believe that you're being harmed. If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation, which is why it's essential that we not respond impulsively to impressions. Take a moment before reacting and you'll find it is easier to maintain control. This is simple advice, and yet it's really difficult, and yet it's very difficult to pull off. It's also very, very important. The idea behind this exercise is to rationally examine our impressions regardless of whether they're negative, such as insults, or positive, such as feelings of lust. We need to resist the impulse to react immediately and instinctively to potentially problematic situations. Instead, we must pause and take a deep breath, perhaps go for a walk around the block, and only then consider the issue with logic and calmness. Once you start seriously practicing this exercise, you'll see a dramatic improvement in the way you handle things, and you'll inevitably get positive feedback from all the others who also see those improvements in you. Number 6. Otherize. According to Epictetus, when somebody's wife or child dies, to a man we all routinely say, well, that's part of life. But if one of our own family's involved, then right away it's poor, poor me. We would do better to remember how we react when a similar loss afflicts others. Epictetus reminds us here of just how differently we regard an event that has affected other people when the same event affects us. It's easy for us to be calm when little inconveniences or even disasters happen to others rather than to ourselves. For example, when your friend loses or breaks his phone, you'll tell him that it's just a phone and he can go out and buy a new one. But when you break your phone, you'll lose your calm. Or even for more grievous matters, like when your friend's wife dies, you'd console him by telling him that death's a part of life and that she's in a better place now. But when you lose someone of your own, you'll lose all your equanimity. Of course, losing your phone is not the same thing as losing your wife, but this exercise is all about understanding that accidents, injuries, disease and death are all unavoidable, and while it's understandable to be distraught over them, we can take comfort in knowing that they're in the normal order of things. The universe isn't after anyone, or at least isn't after any one of us in particular. Number 7. Speak little and well. Epictetus says, "Let silence be your goal for the most part. Say only what is necessary and be brief about it. On the rare occasions when you're called upon to speak, then speak, but never about banalities like gladiators, horses, sports, food and drink, commonplace stuff. Above all, don't gossip about people, praising, blaming, or comparing them." Epictetus gives us the list of things we should not talk about. We may not talk much these days about gladiators, but we do talk about star athletes, movie and music stars and other celebrities, instead of talking about difficult topics, because we've been conditioned to think that serious talk is boring, and at any rate requires more background knowledge and attention than most of us associate with good conversation. Epictetus also advises to stay away from the conversation that's concerned with gossiping and passing judgments of people. To indulge in gossip and judge people who aren't present to defend themselves simply doesn't seem to be the virtuous thing to do. Initially, this exercise will feel unnatural, but over time the habit will eventually kick in. So slowly change your conversational topics and respond less to gossiping and passing judgments, and occasionally introduce a challenging topic of your own that's based on something you've recently read or watched, and that you feel might lead to a mutually beneficial conversation with your friends. Number 8. Choose your company well. Epictetus says, "Avoid fraternizing with non-philosophers. If you must, though, be careful not to sink to their level, because, if a companion is dirty, his friends cannot help but get a little dirty too, no matter how clean they started out." Epictetus advises us to pay very close attention to whom we spend our time with. This is great advice since life is short, temptation and waste are always lurking, and so we need to pay attention to what we're doing and who our companions are. So start spending time with people who are interested in following virtue and cultivating their character. Aristotle once said that we want to be with friends who are better than ourselves so that we can learn from them. Ask yourself about the people you meet and spend time with. Are they making me better? Do they encourage me to push forward? And do they hold me accountable? Or do they drag me down to their level? And then consciously consider whom you allow into your life. Number 9. Respond to insults with humour. In the words of Epictetus, if you learn that someone is speaking ill of you, don't try to defend yourself against the rumours. Respond instead with, yes, and he doesn't know the half of it, because he could have said more. We get easily offended when someone speaks ill about us or insults us. We take the insults too personally, which spoils our mood and ruins our self-esteem. Instead, we need to realise that the insult, what others speak about you, is not in your control, but how you react to it most certainly is. Epictetus tells us to respond to insults with self-deprecating humour. For example, if someone trolls you for being overweight, then instead of getting offended and getting in a useless brawl, reply by saying, yes, I'm finally getting one step closer to being the heaviest person on the planet, and then give it a laugh. By laughing off an insult, we're implying that we don't take the insulter and his insult seriously. To imply this, of course, is to insult the insulter without directly doing so. It's therefore a response that's likely to deeply frustrate the insulter. For this reason, a humorous reply to an insult can be far more effective than a counter-insult would be. Number 10. Don't speak too much about yourself. As we learn from Epictetus, in your conversation, don't dwell at excessive length on your own deeds or adventures. Just because you enjoy recounting your exploits doesn't mean that others derive the same pleasure from hearing about them. We're all guilty of talking too much about ourselves. We talk about ourselves 30 to 40% of the time. That's a lot. Studies have shown that talking about ourselves is strongly associated with increased activity in the mesolimbic dopamine system, the same part of our brain that experiences pleasure through things like food, sex, and money. The truth is, no one wants to sit through a slideshow from your latest vacation, even when presented as tiny pictures on your latest shining iPhone. No one really wants to hear another person going on and on about themselves. It's pretty safe to say that we're not as interesting as we think we are. We need to exercise some self-control and refrain from talking too much about ourselves. This will make our friends and acquaintances happier. Number 11. Speak without judging. To quote Epictetus, someone bathes in haste. Don't say he bathes badly, but in haste. Someone drinks a lot of wine. Don't say he drinks badly, but a lot. Until you know their reasons, how do you know that their actions are vicious? This will save you from perceiving one thing clearly, but then assenting to something different. The idea is to distinguish between matters of fact, to which we can assent if we find them justified by observation, and judgments from which we generally ought to abstain, since we usually don't have sufficient information. The truth is, we're all doing the best we can, and we're not privy to the stories behind people's actions, so we should be patient with others and suspend our judgment of them, recognizing the limits of our understanding. One of the things one must work on is viewing the world as objectively as possible. If you see someone you might be inclined to judge as overweight, think instead of their exact weight, which is a fact, rather than the judgment that there's too much of it. Better yet, see them as a whole person, with all their objective characteristics rather than the one you'd single out. The judgment adds nothing but unhelpful emotion. See the world as it is, and work from that. Finally, number 12. Reflect on your day. As Epictetus teaches, admit not to sleep into your tender eyelids till you've reckoned up each deed of the day. How have I erred? What done or left undone? So start and so review your acts, and then for vile deeds chide yourself, for good be glad. Stoicism isn't just about thinking, it's about action, and the best way to improve is to review. Each evening you should examine your day and your actions. Find a quiet place in your house or apartment and reflect on what's happened during the day. The goal is to focus on the important happenings of the day, particularly those that have ethical valence. Perhaps you spoke ill about your friend, or maybe you were helpful to a colleague. For each of these types of occurrences, write a few lines in your diary and grade your own ethical performance that day. Ask yourself, what did I do well today? Where were my ethics tested, and where did I do well? Where did I do badly? Why did this occur? And furthermore, how can I improve? So now you know how you can self-improve going forward. If you think you did something that might have compromised your virtue, then don't beat yourself up. Be like Seneca and forgive yourself. Have some self-compassion. Research shows that it's forgiving yourself, not beating yourself up, that stops you from continually putting things off. And don't just be critical of yourself. Think about what you did well so you can repeat it tomorrow. And most of all, be grateful for the good that happened today.